Mustangs 1989 journey to state. In 1989, the mighty Mustangs played the most games ever in a season, won the most games ever, and made their first trip to the state championship game. Aldine opened the road to state finals by embarrassing Memorial 43-14 on their own turf. This interception by Carl Heathman was the first of 5 passes that Aldine would pick off in the game. Strong defense such as this would keep the Mustangs in scoring position throughout the game and set up runs like this by Derek Johnson, who will take a pitch from Offensive Player of the Year Doug Womack and use an Asa Harris block to reach pay dirt. The special teams played a key role by keeping Memorial pinned deep in its own territory throughout the game. As a result, the Memorial offense was forced to gamble time after time and lose often, such as this pass, which was thrown up for grabs. The interception by Chris Dixon was the first of 9 thefts he would record on the year. Dion Cook got into the act with his first interception of the season, which he returned 42 yards for a touchdown. So dominant was the Aldine defensive effort that Memorial never crossed midfield in the first half. Special teams again arose to the occasion on this punt attempt to stop Memorial at its own 10-yard line and set up Aldine's final touchdown of the night. Defense was the key in week 2 as Aldine proved unfriendly to opposing quarterbacks, such as this Steve Strahan sack of Cedric Clark to set the tone for what proved to be the first of 2 meetings between Aldine and Willow Ridge in 1989. It was critical that the Mustangs control the ball, and they did just that. Key receptions by Eric Stevens and solid running by the duo of Herman Hobson and Derek Johnson helped Aldine control the tempo of the game. The Eagles tried to take the lead early in the second half, but Chris Dixon's 3rd interception of the year stopped the threat. This bad snap on a Willow Ridge punt attempt proved to be critical as Aldine took advantage of the turnover to score the winning touchdown as Coleman, Sargent, and Autenreith opened the hole on this quarterback sneak by Doug Womack. A bit of dipsy-doodle by Gary Martins on a 2-point conversion put Aldine ahead by 9 late in the game. Aldine was able to use most of the clock on runs like this by Derek Johnson, but the Eagles had one last chance snuffed out on a 4th down sack by Strahan with under a minute remaining. Derek Johnson wasn't sure if it was football or basketball as he dribbled in for a score on the Mustangs' first possession against Conroe in week 3. The Mustangs' defense led the way in a hard-fought 16-14 squeaker over the Tigers at Moorhead Stadium. Urban Briley and Anthony Reese made it a long night for the Conroe offense. By game's end, the Tigers had seen all they wanted of Richard Elder, shown here connecting on 2 of 3 field goals. Accuracy such as this enabled Elder to finish the season with 99 points and all Greater Houston first-team honors. This pass from Martins to Asa Harris and a completion to David Thurgood set up what appeared to be a game-winning strike to Asa Harris. Unfortunately, the play was called back on a penalty, but not to worry. With only 7 seconds remaining, Elder shut the door on the Tigers' cage with this game-winning 26-yard field goal. Aldine opened District 21-5A play, hoping to repeat as district champions. Their opening game opponent were the explosive Jaguars of Forest Brook. But this night, the Jaguars' powder was wet, and it was Aldine that rolled up the points in a 44-6 rout. As usual, the Jaguars quickly went to the air, but Aldine was ready. In a scene becoming familiar to Mustang fans, Chris Dixon intercepted and returned deep into Jaguar territory. The Mustangs did it all defensively this night. Interceptions, recovering fumbles, sacking the quarterback, and blocking punts. The Mustangs even surprised the Jaguars by doing a fancy bit of passing themselves. Overall, however, it was the defensive effort by Aldine that frustrated the Jaguar passing game. Dixon's second interception of the night and yet another quarterback sack gave the Mustangs the ball in excellent field position. This gave Herman Hobson and Derek Johnson plenty of opportunities to control the ground game and to score often. Week 5 matched Aldine against surprising Eisenhower. The Mustangs felt they'd have to score often, and plays such as this kickoff return by Dion Cook helped them to do just that as Aldine raced to a 52-22 win. This Womack to Thurgood pass set up one of Aldine's early touchdowns, a 6-yard run by Derek Johnson. All Greater Houston offensive lineman Eric Ottenreith led the way. As seemed to be the case most of the season, the Aldine offense operated from good field position all night, thanks to returns like this one by Asaph Harris. When Aldine had the football, quarterback Doug Womack used blocking by All-State lineman James Mulkey to break loose on long gains and to stay in the pocket and deliver scoring strikes like the one coming up to Asaph Harris. The Mustangs played well on both sides of the ball. This series of plays shows why Aldine was able to limit their opponents to just 77 yards per game rushing, while averaging over 389 yards in offense each week. Eisenhower quarterback Rick Roper was never unable to unleash his potent passing attack as he was pursued throughout the game and repeatedly sacked. And each time Roper went down, the Mustangs would score. After this final sack by Briley and Strahan, John Sargent would lead the way as Johnson went into the end zone one more time. The opening kickoff against Nimitz proved to be an omen as the Mustangs were stopped cold. Despite some exceptionally good play, the overall effort was based on overconfidence, and the Mustangs came up on the short end of a 21-14 decision to the Cougars, their only loss of the regular season. It proved once again that you're only as good as you play, and the Mustangs were met by an outstanding effort by the Cougars. Trailing 14-0, Womack finally got the Mustangs on the board on this 17-yard effort. Following a long run by Johnson and this completion to Kevin Smith, Womack would find Harris wide open to tie the game at 14-all. The Cougars would capitalize on a fumble to score what proved to be the winning touchdown late in the final quarter, but the Mustangs' defense still would not allow Nimitz to add much to their offensive totals despite the loss. The Mustangs would enjoy a week away from district play in Game 7, hosting Clear Lake. This game was a cure-all as the offense and defense quickly got well at the Falcons' expense. All-district linemen Roderick Jordan and John Sargent would open holes for Hobson and Womack, who raced in for easy scores. Defensive Player of the Year Anthony Reese, quarterback sack led to this block punt by Dion Cook. Then it was all-district end Chris Allen who forced a field goal situation that was blocked by Chris Dixon and recovered by Adrian Banks. Womack wasted no time in going to Harris, who followed a great block by Eric Gray on his way to pay dirt, and Mr. Reliable Richard Elder would add the point after. The defense recorded its only shutout of the season and earned the applause of defensive coordinator Pat Patterson and coaches Dale Baker, Andy Rice, Mitch Reed, and Phil Addison, as well as Floyd Priester. The team effort was highly satisfying to Coach of the Year, Bill Smith. The offensive unit, coached by offensive coordinator Charlie Fitzmaurice and assisted by Landis Denley, Richard Carson, and Willie Charles, was in top form as they raced around, over, and through the opposition. Aldine returned to district play the following week against Smiley at Jones Cowart Stadium. The Mustangs scored at will, running to a 55-7 decision over the Golden Eagles. Womack's long scamper would set up a touchdown run by Johnson to open the scoring. The Eagles could do little on offense, and that allowed Aldine to play control football. The offensive line of Coleman, Autenreith, Mulkey, Sargent, and Jordan all received postseason honors, and their contribution enabled Aldine to average over 36 points a game and to repeatedly open big holes for the Mustangs' dynamic duo of Johnson and Hobson. The Eagles were simply no match for Mustang speed. Even completed passes were stopped for little or no gain. With starter Doug Womack getting a well-earned rest, Eric Gray gets into the act with his fine run, and finally a touchdown pass to Kevin Smith. Larry Kassam's long punt return would set up Gray's game-ending touchdown run. Week 9 would renew the Aldine-MacArthur rivalry with a district championship and playoff berth at stake. The Aldine defense quickly showed the fire ants that Mustangs could swarm also. Offensively, Womack wasted little time as he lighted the scoreboard with this 70-yard scamper. All-State linebacker Neil Pierre kept the pressure on Emerson with a sack, and then Martins make the interception and return deep into general territory. From there, Womack would need only one play to go over for the score. The Generals simply couldn't match the Mustangs at the line of scrimmage, as Womack and then Johnson would find plenty of running room. Once again, Gary Martins and the special teams got into the act with this block punt. A determined effort by Eric Gray on this touchdown run, and Elder's conversion would close out the scoring against the Big Red Machine. The final game of the regular season was played at DeMint Stadium against North Shore, and for the third consecutive game, Aldine scored over 50 points, taking a 52-7 decision over the Ponies. Following Johnson's opening touchdown run, Hobson would put the Mustangs deep into North Shore territory. From there, it was Womack going 38 yards to widen the Aldine lead. Womack then passed to Johnson for 6 more as the Mustangs led easily 28-0 at halftime. After holding North Shore deep in its own end of the field, Womack went to the air to Eric Gray and then to Danny Flores for 6. When the red-clad Mustangs tried to strike back, Reginald Davis intercepted and returned it all the way for a touchdown. A fired-up Aldine defense completely shut down North Shore after that. Riley's tackle stopped a Mustang series. This touchdown pass from Gray to Thurgood helped close out the scoring, while special teams put the Mustangs in a position to run out the clock. This return by Justo Puente helped him earn Special Teams Player of the Week award. John Lacey and Larry Kassam then added long runs to put a final touch on the regular season. Aldine entered the playoffs determined to continue doing those things which had brought them this far. Against Westbrook in the opening round, the Bruins quickly found out why opponents were scoring less than 13 points per game against the Mustangs. Downfield coverage and a strong pass rush would hold Westbrook's offense in check, while Aldine was busy rolling up the yards en route to a 42-14 win. This completion to Thurgood would set up a Womack to Harris pass good for 38 yards as the Mustangs added to their lead. Good pursuit highlighted the Mustangs' defensive effort as Westbrook was repeatedly stopped in its own end of the field. The Mustangs were able to score from anywhere on the field. This 74-yard romp by Womack put the finishing touches on the 10th victory of the year and set off this celebration of a by-district championship. The Mustangs had a score to settle with Deer Park in the area round of the playoffs. Aldine was held under 40 points for the first time in 6 weeks, but this Womack to Hobson pitch provided all the scoring Mustangs would need to improve their record to 11-1. The Deer never got on track, gaining only 22 yards on the ground, and when they attempted to throw the ball, the Mustang defense rose to the task. This interception by Marcus Allen would stop a Deer Park threat in the first half. It was this game that saw Doug Womack come within 2 yards of setting a state playoff single-game rushing record, as Doug carried 28 times for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns. Turnovers like this interception by Dixon kept giving the Mustangs the ball, and when they took possession, Womack knew exactly what to do. In this series, the Mustangs demonstrate the goal line stand at its finest. On goal to go from the 1-yard line, the Mustangs slammed the door 4 straight times, killing any opportunity of a Deer Park rally. Three times the Deer tried to run it over with no luck. Down to their last play, they went to the air, only to have Dion Cook turn out the lights. It doesn't get any better than that. From then on, it was all Mustangs as Womack piled up the yards and ran out the clock on a 24-3 area win. In the regional round against previously unbeaten Lamar, Aldine rolled to a lopsided 42-6 victory. The Redskins stopped Womack on the ground, but not through the air, as seen in this long pass to Asaph Harris. And if Womack can't get loose, Johnson can, going 82 yards for the score. Downfield coverage by Justo Puente kept the Redskins deep and helped force turnovers, like an interception by Reginald Davis. The Redskins simply had no place to go. This turnover gave Aldine field position and led to a 17-yard scoring run by Womack behind the blocks of Danny Flores and Roderick Jordan. An aggressive defense stopped Lamar deep and at midfield as well, where Larry Kassam came up with a timely interception on a fake punt attempt. The Mustangs were able to limit the high-powered Lamar offense to just 259 total yards, while adding up 493 for themselves on runs like this one by Johnson. Tremel Prudhomme and Wesley White opened a big hole for Robert Gould on this play. Then it was Eric Gray passing to Travis Thetford. And finally, Gary Butler's late pitch to Billy Steptoe for big yards as Aldine advanced to the state quarterfinals. This game was a rematch against the Willow Ridge Eagles, and Dion Cook boosted everyone's confidence with this return of the opening kickoff. Aldine was able to keep the Eagles in check throughout a scoreless first half, and then Womack broke the 0-0 tie when he faked a run and then threw to Harris on a 49-yard scoring pass and run. This run by Johnson and a pass to Harris helped Aldine to run out the clock in the first half, holding on to a slim 7-6 lead. On the first play of the second half, Marcus Allen's big hit forced a fumble recovered by Irvin Briley. From there, Derek Johnson would fight his way into the end zone for the final 14-6 score. After that, it was all up to the defense. This fourth down play stopped the last deep threat by the Eagles. And a tackle by Chris Allen ended any Willow Ridge hope as Aldine recorded its first ever quarterfinal victory. Despite 4 impressive playoff performances in a row, no one expected Aldine to handle the state's #1 team in its own stadium. But the Mustangs ignored Converse Judson's reputation and the nasty weather and raced past the Rockets 48-14 to raise their season record to 14-1 and advance to the state championship for the first time in the school's history. The Rockets, ranked second in the nation by USA Today, had given up only 96 points in their 14 wins and had not allowed 48 points in a game since 1975. The loss was only their second of the year. Herman Hobson would lead a 449-yard rushing attack with 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. Womack would finish with 3 touchdowns, 137 yards. And Derek Johnson would add 1 touchdown and 99 rushing yards. So strong was the Mustang defense that Judson would cross midfield only twice in the first half. The Rockets were shut down on the ground and in the air, as with this Gary Martin's interception. After the game, Womack was quoted as saying that Aldine's offensive linemen should be the players of the week since they contributed to the best offensive performance of the year. Thanks also should go to the defensive unit for giving the Mustangs field position all afternoon and setting up runs like these by Eric Gray. Saturday, December 23rd, a date which will live in infamy. Aldine versus Odessa Permian, playing for the state 5A championship. The Mustangs were 14-1 and playing for the title for the first time. Permian was at 15-0 and making their 9th appearance in the big game. The site was Texas Stadium in Irving, and the day was the coldest day of the 20th century in the Metroplex. At kickoff, it was 6 degrees. It seemed colder than that in the Mustangs locker room after the game, as Aldine fell to the Panthers 28-14. But it was not the weather or even Permian's famed mojo that cost the Mustangs this day. According to Coach Smith, Aldine was simply trying to do too much. They tried too hard, and that forced mistakes that they otherwise would not make. Still, Permian was taken to the limit by the always hustling Mustangs, who rallied to within 21-14 on touchdown runs by Johnson and Hobson. Hobson led all rushers with 158 yards, while Johnson added 142 yards, 1 touchdown, and Womack chipped in with 95 yards to help the Mustangs roll up 395-yard output against the Panthers. Following Aldine's first touchdown, Robert Gould introduced himself to a Permian return man with this big hit. Mustangs defense contained Permian well throughout the second half of the ball game, but a late Panther touchdown would put the game out of reach. The Mustangs finished their season at 14-2, the best record in Aldine's history. And with 12 starters returning in 1990, there's a great deal of optimism about Aldine's chances of returning to the final 2 and a chance to make the first year of this new decade the year of the Mustang.